Good evening. My name is Lisa Steele, and I'm the artistic director at Vtape, where we acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory, which is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. And all newcomers have been invited into this territory, into this treaty. Subsequent indigenous nations, Métis and the Inuit peoples, Europeans have all been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Good evening. I would like to welcome Jesse Cumming to introduce himself and this project, along with Kyoko Michishita, Michi. Jesse.
Thank you so much, Lisa. My name is Jesse Cumming. I'm a curator and a writer from Toronto. I'm so happy to be here tonight, joined by both of you to share this wonderful work. Michi and I, we met 2 years ago now in February of 2020, when I was in Japan doing a research project, doing a research fellowship, looking at early Japanese video art. She so kindly invited me into her home and was telling me more about her work, and I was totally amazed by it all, and was amazed in particular by the fact that it was so little seen. For such a figure whose work intersects with so many important movements, both social, technological, I was amazed that it had been little taken care of and little preserved in Japan. And so we began this mission to try and find a way to get these films and videos seen again. And so thankfully, with some support from the Japan Foundation Toronto, we have been able to gather and ship these videos and tapes. I believe it's seven short films, 60mm films, and 16 videotapes that Kim Tomczak from Vtape has been valiantly restoring the videotapes, while the Vulnerable Media Lab at Queen's University has been working to digitize the film work. And so there's a lot of work to be done still in terms of subtitling and all of that, but I'm so pleased that later this year they'll be available from distribution from Vtape, and it'll be possible to see more of them soon. But for today, we're here to introduce Kyoko Michishita and her work by showing some clips and having a bit of a conversation between yourself, Lisa, and yourself, Michi.
Thank you, Jesse. We're going to, and welcome, Michi. It's wonderful to have you being introduced here to a North American audience. We are thrilled to have the work that is going to go into distribution through Vtape, and thank you very much for entrusting us to us, entrusting your work to us. We're going to start with a very short, very intriguing work called Two Highlights in a Life of Woman. And that's from 1974, a very early work. And Michi, do you want to introduce this and give us an idea of your thoughts when you put these scenes together?
Yes, thank you, Lisa, Jess, Kim, and Chris at Vtape, and also Japan Foundation, Toronto. It was like a dream, you know. My works had been in my storage space for half a century, and they must be surprised to be awakened up. And thank you for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Well, I came back to Japan in 1969 after having spent in the States for 5 years this time. And then when I got back home, I mean, the atmosphere in this country, I mean, as far as independence and equality of women were concerned, very oppressive. And then I was disappointed or in a way filled with anger. And I got a job working at Tokyo American Center, which was a part of the US government. I mean, more specifically, a branch of USIA in Washington, that information agent founded by President Kennedy, I think. The first director was a famous Edward Murrow, remember? Because of his program that Red Scare activist, a senator from Wisconsin,
yes,
began to roll down. Anyhow, so I was filled with this frustration and anger. And what shall I do? Well, fortunately, I happened to meet Fujiko Nakaya, who just found Video Hiroba meaning square, a group of people, and mostly they are the artists, established artists in various fields. And she said, oh, just start making one. You could do it. Very encouraging. And that's how I started making one. But why I made this short film was this. And I thought at that time, most Japanese women wish to get married only because that's the only way to survive, So when women pass the age of 30, old women, we used to be called secretly behind our backs, grandma, things like that. And then I was horrified and really, angry. At that time, I would just tell you the brief background, sociological background. 70% of households had full-time housewives. Only 30% had 2 paychecks. And also hideous myth of maternity, myth about mother. How mothers have to behave. Well, the myth was this: mothers should stay with children until they became old enough. Well, old enough, how long? Some people said old enough to start kindergarten or grade school, or sometimes junior high, it varied. Anyhow, the fact was women never able to get back to the jobs they used to hold, after this blank. And even today, women, most of the women who work outside the home are part-timers. 70% of women who have jobs outside the house are part-timers. So COVID-19 happened. Who will be kicked out first? Women. And women with children are suffering most greatly. And so this was the general background. And right now, the ratio I gave you, 70% of the household had full-time housewives. Now this ratio has been completely reversed starting around 1995. Now 70% of households have 2 paychecks and less than 30% have full-time housewives. But we now face a serious problem that is how women maintain her own maiden name after her marriage. And we have this hideous group of right-wing, and we never use the word right-wing in this country. I don't know why. They say conservative, quite conservative, very moderate term. Anyhow, most of the politicians belong to liberal Democrats, belong to this a huge right-wing association called Japan Conference. And they strongly believe that women's home is home. And also they believe in the old Meiji Constitution, etc. But I won't go into this. So because of this background, we've been fighting with this issue in the past 25 years. We can never make it. I mean, many people take the issue to the court, but the court ruling was always on the side with the present regime. So this, what we call two separate family names in one household has been completely being denied by the present regime, patriarchal system, because they believe in order to have a healthy, strong society, country, a family has to be healthy. Well, in their mind, healthy family consists of full-time mother and man working outside the house. So in other words, women have changed greatly, but not so much about the mind of men, especially those who hold the power. So that's the present, the background. And I made this short film describing these are the only two opportunities for women to become sort of the stars for a moment, you know, drawing people's attention, congratulations, you know, I mean, dolled up and wearing beautiful things, and then, I mean, holding a baby, in the first baby, not so much after the second baby, I don't think, you know. So I accentuated, I took these two highlights to express this is how women find the greatest joy. Is that enough? You know, please think about it. And that's how I made this film. So it was full of my anger behind, you know, and also my sincere and heartfelt love toward women in Japan.
Perfect. Let's clip number 1.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Mishi. Now we're going to show a clip from Living with the Ocean, which is also from 1974.
Yes.
So this clip focuses on the gathering of seaweed and also has a short clip of the drying of the seaweed after it's been gathered. Can you offer a bit of an intro to this work?
Oh, yes, I have to tell you a little bit about my oldest brother, who was a doctor, medical doctor. He was told during his internship back in 1955 or 54, I think, Michishita go to Kiritapu, this small fishing village off the coast of the Pacific Ocean, which was recently at that time hit by a huge tidal wave tsunami by the earth. I mean, after the earthquake near Tohoku area, Sanriku. It was Tokachi. So actually, not Tohoku, but Hokkaido, the bottom part of Hokkaido. So a great damage was caused in this small fishing village, and epidemic was spreading, and people were killed, and houses are smashed and washed out, etc. So he was a newlywed then, 26 or 7, and he and his wife had to pack and then leave Sapporo, which is the capital of Hokkaido, and then they're hoping to start their new life in there, and arrived in a small fishing village. The disaster. At first, villagers were very cold to them. Gee, what a young man, what can he do? That kind of thing. And then I won't go into a couple of episodes, which really made the villagers, love my brother. And then they, at the end of the year, when they're supposed to leave, they came, in line. Oh, please, doctor, don't desert us, don't go, that kind of thing. And it's like a drama, and on and on. And each time his wife started packing, ready? Oh, good, I can go back to a big city. It's a hard life, and it went on. And then in 8 years, in 1960, an earthquake, bigger, happened in South America, Chile. And tidal wave, big tsunami came, again hitting Kiritapu so hard. And now he just couldn't leave. So he ended up living there for over 40 years until he finally retired in 2000. That's why I had a chance to visit this small village many times all these years, and then met Yamazaki family who harvests seaweed. Seaweed is we're not doing justice to this wonderful seed plant, and I use, without seaweed, I cannot continue my Japanese diet, because you make soup stock with seaweed, and then take it out and put a bonito in it, and then a little bit, and then you have a wonderful stock. And this we use for making miso soup, or when you have noodle, that dripping, how do you say, that sauce, and tempura, that in the same way. The basis of any good Japanese dishes have seaweed. And this Kiritapu is one of the, probably they produce a large amount of seaweed and known for it. It doesn't look beautiful as the kombu in other areas, wide and straight, I mean, this one, sometimes, you know, and then a narrow and a shrink, and then it doesn't look aesthetically beautiful as much as the others, but it really creates good soup. So one year I decided to, I took my Potapack, newly acquired a Potapack, shortly after, a year after. And they have a tight rule, you know, how many people get on to a little boat. So I was allowed to get in. Yamazaki, Mrs. Yamazaki, she was the chief of the group. And two of her children, a daughter and a boy, they're both in high school, I think. And but before we actually left the ocean, the seaside, I had to wait for a couple of days until we saw a white flag flying at the tip of a pole near the ocean. That was the sign, okay, you can go out. When you see red flag, no, the weather is not good enough. So I had to stay with my brother for a couple of days until okay day arrived. And that's how I went on. But, and you can see a little bit how big, how long the seaweed is. It's like more than 3 meters high. Mrs. Yamazaki showed me inside her house so that I had a better idea from the floor to touching the floor that long. And that the way to dry, the most expensive, for connoisseur, kombu is dried under the sunlight because it's tasty and also creates vitamin D and all the good things. But it takes time, and you have to worry about that weather. You lay all the kombu and the rain comes and you have to cover it up and all that. Now, most of the kombu industry workers use machines, electric, like a dryer, and do that more easily. But I have, because of my brother's connection, Yamazaki family, when I place an order, they give me part of what they made preciously for themselves, under the sunlight. So when I get 5 kilo, this bundle, every year at the end of a summer, around October, new harvest arrives in my apartment, and I've been splitting it into four bundles and send them off to my dear friends. Mm-hmm. So that's how this was made. But this tape has been lost for half a century, and it, Jess knew he wanted to see it 2 years ago, and then it was completely gone. And I managed to find this open reel, but having an open reel, no way in Japan. And so thank you so much for reviving their life. It's life.
Thank you, Michi. We will watch clip number 2.
Thank you so much for this beautiful clip, Mishi. I was curious to maybe hear you speak a little bit more about your work and how it sort of overlapped or maybe intersected with the environmental movement that was taking place at your time in Japan.
Yes. You know, of course, I am interested deeply about environmental issues, and we have so many problems today in Japan because the tendency of the government is cut all the trees, you know, and build high-rise towers. They're doing that in near newly built Olympic Stadium in the middle of the best part of Tokyo. And then, of course, in Okinawa, destroying, burying the beautiful ocean for years to build a US base, which I don't think it could be possible because the land is like mayonnaise, you know, specialists say. So no matter how much money they put in, trying to fill the ocean with the mud, and my heart bleeds to see how beautiful ocean is being killed. And those people in Okinawa, the average age, like over 80 almost, women have been fighting for the sake of their grandchildren. They have to leave the beautiful environment, I mean, which they have enjoyed, appreciated. But all these things, I can go on and on. Anyhow, but back in 1970s, I was involved in, myself, feminist movement was my priority. So I didn't have time, I wasn't capable of getting involved in any other issue. But Fujiko Nakaya, as you know, she was the one who founded Video Hiroba. Without her, we would have probably never had the beginning of video art. And Michael Goldberg, you know, came from Canada. And I think he married a Japanese girl and a woman, and now live in Tokyo. Fujiko Nakaya is now more well known as a fog sculptor. She creates artificially fog, filling any exhibition space. And she was even awarded the best cultural French, you know, by the French government. I can't pronounce that name. A couple of years ago, after while she was having a show, along with the show of her father. Her father is a well-known snow scholar. He was the one who discovered how snow is organized, is made, you know, snowflake scholar. So probably there's something to do with, you know, creating artificial snow and artificial fog. Anyhow, at that time, Fujiko made a wonderful piece, documentation of victims of Minamata disease, coming all the way in a large number from Kumamoto Prefecture in Kyushu back in 1970, around 1974, I think, this documentation. I don't have time to call Fujiko to really, you know, get the right year of the work was made. It was in black and white. Well, these people were sleeping in front of the headquarters of Japan Chiso Corporation, whose chemical factory back in Kumamoto was releasing severely poisoned contaminated mercury, methyl mercury in the industrial wastewater. And people didn't know, they love fish. That's their industry, catching fish. The first symptom came in cats because they love cats also, but they're much smaller. So it came out much faster than it did in human beings. So the victims have been fighting against the home company, Chiso Corporation, for years. The first victim was found back in 1955. And then the first court order was given in 1973, I think. But it wasn't enough, although on the surface, it was a victory on the part of the victims. So Fujiko, in early years, when victims all came to protest and demonstrate in front of the Chiso Corporation and in the Hibiya, I think, in the central part of Tokyo, I have seen her work, and they slept on the cold concrete pavement, and when early morning came, they got up and lined up and protesting and wearing the slogan and banner and whatnot. And she really captured the details of what all these people were doing, extremely interesting and important work. And I have to tell you about regarding Minamata. Some of you might have seen Minamata, the film, Hollywood film, produced and starred by Johnny Depp, portraying the work of a great American photojournalist, Eugene Smith. Mm-hmm. He and his wife, Eileen, went to Minamata in 1974, thinking they would stay only for 3 months, but ended up living there for 3 years. And I saw the movie. It's a great work. I was so grateful for Johnny Depp and also Eugene Smith. There are several filmmakers who are also documenting Minamata victims. The big difference between us and them is this: sending the news to the rest of the world. They did the justice to victims and also made them visible to the rest of the world. And for that, I'm very grateful. We are very lucky to have had these great power who assisted the voiceless people in our country.
Well, thank you, Michi, for that. It's a little change of pace now. I really loved the opportunity to see Yoko Ono perform in your 1974 tape, Yoko Ono in Japan, Let's Have a Dream.
Yes.
Can you tell us how you came to make that recording? Because it's so amazing. It is wonderful.
Well, thank you. Before I went out to videotape her live performance, I got LP record back in 1973. I will show you. This is, can you see it?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes. It's called Approximately Infinite Universe. And it has 2 records. And it's so powerful. I mean, she had been already married to John Lennon. Most of the songs were written and sung by Yoko, but some sung, jointly. And what impressed me most is the text she wrote with her handwriting inside. This is in print. The title of her essay is called The Feminization of a Society. I noticed yesterday when I was doing research, recently, some record company made a CD of this. I mean, seeing this is the right time for, since somehow Japan is a little more interested in gender issues, quote unquote, they don't use the word feminist issues. So like this, her hand writing. Well, she was talking about the same thing as Gloria Steinem and the rest of the activists in the second wave of feminist movement have been saying all these years. That is, feminization is the opposite word of patriarchy, patriarchal society versus feminized society, more democratic. Patriarchy is the root of all the vices, as I consider. You name domestic violence or child abuse or rape, and then ultimate case of this is war, killing each other for nothing and just pleasing military industry. They can't stop laughing because they keep making new ammunitions and they quickly go out of style, right? So this is ridiculous. That's the epitome, that's the typical, that the worst case of this system. So I was impressed when I saw the title and read the whole text, Feminization of Society. And she was saying, we should stop when women get the equal pay as men do. That's not enough. Well, that Gloria calls it a reform. It's not revolution. You have to wish the entire women race, has to get equal payment as men do. That's a revolution. So she was saying exactly the same thing. And Gloria never published a book. She was so busy traveling and organizing and throughout the United States and even the world. So the book she finally put together, putting all the articles she had written, and the title, The Outrageous Acts and Everyday Rebellions, published in 1983. I translated it a few years later in Japan. And for the publication of the book, she came to Japan, I think 1985, she came to Japan for the first time. Well, so that is the background for my great admiration for Yoko Ono. And in 1974, the news arrived and TV and Yoko Ono is coming to Japan. She will have a traveling live concert. So I quickly purchased a ticket to go to her concert in Tokyo, which I did. I was overwhelmed, and I have to videotape her at her next live concert in Japan. I checked who is responsible for her at her record company. Toshiba record company was releasing her record. So I got to him I talked to him, explaining, how much I want to, no matter where I will go, I will go, you just name it, I will go, and carrying a porta pack. Well, I will talk to Yoko, I will get back to you soon. Soon he did. The next day, he said, Yoko's response is fine, with one condition, that is, give me a copy of the tape you have made. That was the only condition. And they didn't even, they provided a space in Osaka, in a large theater, the next traveling live concert, Kosei Nenkin Hall in Osaka. I did. And I had never met her in person. The closest we came, like 3 meters away, I was on the floor, busy watching the reel going, properly. And Yoko in white and long hair screaming, Kyoko, Kyoko. And then that was the only time we came very close. But this tape had been lost for a long time, because at that time, the final copy, original we call, was done in big open reel. And from there, we made a 3/4 inch cassette. And that's the format we participated in various festivals. And I was so stupid. And when I got a call, send us a tape. And then I did. I never made sure the tape was returned safely. I never did, because I was busy for the next project, because I had to get to American Center by I was always late, by 15 minutes. I don't know how I could survive, how they could generously allow me to stay working there for 27.5 years. I'm so grateful to my colleagues and to the US government. So that's how Yoko's tape happened.
It's a wonderful story. I think we've got time right now to play clip number 3.
と夢を分かち合いたい。それで一人で夢を見てる時には本当に心細いんですけれども、5万人で一緒に夢を見るなんていうのはね、やっぱりそれだけの力があるでしょ。だからとても嬉しかったと思います。私たちこんにちは、陽子です。
Now, Michi, you've spoken already a little bit about Gloria Steinem. When I was beginning to learn more about your work from this era, we know that you introduced not only Gloria Steinem, but also Georgia O'Keeffe to Japan in this era. And I can only imagine that women, that many people in the country were very grateful to you for that. And you also brought a deeper understanding of feminism to Japan through many of the translations that you did at that time. And we're going to play a clip of the tape you did with Gloria Steinem in 1978. And this is a work that I really enjoyed because of the informality. I loved the women sitting around, talking on the floor, having sushi. It reminded me of myself and my work. I worked in a collective of women in that exact same era. And it was, yeah, it was like that. So, and, you know, they're talking about very important things, but passing the food around. And do you want to just introduce this? We just have a very short clip of the Gloria Steinem piece, but also we should be saying to our viewers tonight who are looking at who are watching, that all of this work will be in its entirety available for people to view, to play in classes, to play in exhibitions, to show in galleries, wherever, because it is being brought into distribution because Jesse has brought the work to Vtape, and Vtape is, and Kim Tomczak in particular, are restoring that work and bringing it, making it distributable. So, but do introduce this tape that you did with Gloria Steinem.
I'm glad I put this tape in the package, because it wasn't, this isn't a completed work, quote unquote. It was sort of rough cut. I mean, I recorded it, and that's it. I might not have seen it after I finished videotaping. Well, this happened with a strong wish from Gloria Steinem when she came to Japan that was back in 1978, for the first time in her case to visit Japan. Well, I have to give you a little background before that, because do you remember Erika Jong's Fear of Flying?
Oh, yes.
And that became a tremendous, like world bestseller, right? And the new word slogan, flying women, meaning independent new women, became very fashionable. So several publishing houses tried to find a new women's magazine. One of them was called More Magazine, which still exists, but content has greatly changed. Published by one of the major publishing houses called Shueisha. And about that time, my first media work, my media debut, translating called A Male Guide to Women's Liberation, Jean Marin, M-A-R-I-N, living in journalist in California. Japanese title. The title of the Japanese translation is What is Real Femininity? And well, I wanted to say there's no such a thing as, femininity. It only means real humanity. That's the hidden word. Anyhow, so I was in the situation, getting some the attention from the media world because of this work. And the editors of Shueisha, who are directly involved in putting this new magazine together, became close friends with me. And in fact, after the magazine was published, they sort of gave me a lot of works, as an interviewer or reviewing films and things like that. But getting back to this invitation to Gloria Steinem, at the same time, this publishing house started the international more women's seminar using one of the best flashy hotels called, you probably know, Hotel Okra, and in a huge, banquet room, and I think it was free of charge. Can you imagine? Wow. And the economy was very good at that time. And the first year they invited Erika Jong, of course, you see, she was the face of that period. And I had visited her in her house in Connecticut some years later. But that's, anyhow, the second year, somebody else, Sonia Riquel from France, a wonderful fashion designer. And in the third year, finally, because I have been talking to these editors, oh, isn't it possible to invite her? She is so important. And I didn't say more important than the previous ones, but I mean, somehow one of the editors put the subject into the meeting, and here she was. How can I say? The company endorsed her request. I mean, the proposal. So Gloria Steinem came to Japan to be a keynote speaker for this international more women's seminar. And at the same time, editor asked me to interview Gloria Steinem for 2 days for the magazine. One day, the first day in Hibiya Park, it's like small scale, the Central Park in Tokyo. And second day in her hotel room at the Hotel Okra. And that was the first time I had ever met Gloria Steinem in person. I was a subscriber of Ms. Magazine since its foundation back in 1972. So for about 6 years, Gloria Steinem, wherever I met, influential people in this country, and she's wonderful and she's important. Finally, my dream has come true. And I felt like this is the same feeling I had when I first, after many tries, when I first met Georgia O'Keeffe in 1990, I think. No. She passed away in 1980, 86 or so, 1980 more like. So the first time I met Georgia O'Keeffe and the first time I met Gloria Steinem, my mind went all white or sparkling or whatever, almost shaking. I thought probably that's how I would have felt if I had been very enthusiastic admirer of Karl Marx, for example. And then when I met Karl Marx, which I'm not a great admirer of Karl Marx, I was not. So, but there are many admirers in the world. So this is how we met for the first time. And then Gloria had a request for me. She says she wanted to meet many women as possible, feminists, while she was in Japan. And then I tried to think why the site, the gathering place happened to be in my small of all the places in Tokyo. I don't remember, because I remember the editor offered a possibility, Michi, we could set up a hotel room so that you could invite, who will be best and who would like to meet, or Gloria would be like matching. But it turned out it was in my place. And when I told Gloria, oh, Gloria, it's so small, we can't invite more than 2 or 3. I only have 3 chairs and bed. Oh, never mind, we can all sit on the floor like that. and then that was like half a century ago. I have no idea what I did with the food or drink or utensils or cups and saucers. I have no idea. It just happened like that.
いや、この人、私の方がいいの取ろうと思ったのよ。ママでしょ?
If they're too well educated or when they're fired when they get married. Is that against the law in principle?
それはまた嫌ですか? やはりアドバイザー。素人の判断するのはいいかなって感じだけど。Woman is going to be housewife, you see, and the woman doesn't stick to the job, you know, so they don't want to hire.
No, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for it, but is it not illegal?
It's legal.
It's legal.
Actually, we need another law that
Yes.
says specifically that it has to be illegal. Otherwise,
Yeah.
昨日私三菱電機のね。
三菱電機。
三菱電機の女の人たち、労働者の女の人たちの集まりに行ったの。
She went to the meeting of female workers in Mitsubishi Electric Company yesterday.
それでね、やっぱり4つぐらいのテーマでやったのね。ディスカッションを。で、1つはなんだっけな、生理休暇。
Yeah, period.
これをね、
They talked about the period. Yeah.
それからその次にね、今育児休業って民間企業にはないけどあるでしょ。あれについてつまり有給でね、100% 有給でそれを民間企業も我々も認めるべき求めるべきかどうかっていうのは。
They discussed whether it's reasonable for the woman to get a childbearing kind of, you know, payment while they're off.
Yes, this is a big issue for us too.
Oh, really?
そうそう。それから3番目はね、役割分担ね。
The third discussion is sex role change.
これどう考える?
Discrimination in jobs.
そうそうそう。
Kind of. The women just got only, you know, menial jobs. So menial kind of job, repetitive kind of job.
それからね、
just assistant.
そうそれからもう一つがね。
And Yuri was one of the best friends. Unfortunately, she passed away several years ago. Oh, well, the time flies, not only several, but more like 15 years ago of cancer. But at that time, she was by far the best friend. And she was also the one who introduced me to the world of both Alfred Stieglitz and Georgia O'Keeffe, because she studied art in the United States. And I studied journalism. I was busy, you know, catching up the reading and everything else. And it wasn't in the reading list, you know, Gloria, Georgia O'Keeffe and Stieglitz. So Yuri was the one day she brought the huge, you know, a picture book called a portrait by Stieglitz, Alfred Stieglitz, and also a book of paintings by Georgia O'Keeffe called Georgia O'Keeffe by Georgia O'Keeffe. And Georgia O'Keeffe was published in 1978, and probably a portrait 1976 or so. So she ordered these books from the States, and they had just arrived, and then she enjoyed looking at them, and she wanted to show them. So she brought them. And I was really, I mean, it was like, I held my breath, how wonderful they are. And then I have been living without knowing all these wonderful works. Immediately, I became a great admirer of both artists. So that was the beginning of my long trip, to trying to visit Georgia O'Keeffe, etc. So she and I tried to go make a trip to visit O'Keeffe. Stiglitz was gone, but O'Keeffe was still there in New Mexico, Abiquiu, little village, and also Ghost Ranch, both are in New Mexico. So we planned, we got together. So in those days, we really met frequently and chatting over dinner or whatever. She was working in the gallery of, in the basement of Hotel Okra then. And so we actually did. But you see, it took, there are many difficulties before I finally got to see Georgia O'Keeffe. So Yuri never got to see her. For our second try, the first try, we got into this fraud. I don't want to go into the details. We kept writing to Georgia O'Keeffe, never heard from her. I'm sure she received 1,000 letters, right, from all over the world. And by chance, Yuri told me one of her friends in the States had a client, among her clients was a man by the name of so-and-so Stiglitz. He was a remote relative of Stiglitz, but actually he was a black sheep, turned out. So the first try, we went to the States, but appointment was never made. But we managed to knock on the door and we met, Peter, Judy Lopez. She's still there taking care of the house, taking a group on a tour. They're not allowed to go in because it's old and deteriorate the house. So a small group of 6 look at the O'Keeffe house from the windows, I think, and she is still there. Peter came out and said, "Oh, he did it again." Apparently he was notorious doing that. But that was the beginning of our good luck because of this incident, Georgia O'Keeffe wrote to me, a letter was waiting for me when I got back to my apartment. That apartment, you have seen partially in the clips. The letter said, "I'm sorry, this is what happened, but next time you happen to be in this area, you are invited to lunch. So be sure to let me know." I said, "Oh, I don't happen to be there, I have to make point of going there." So Yuri and I started making a new plan for the second try that fall in the same year, 1980, I think. Well, unfortunately, when we knocked on the door, Juan Hamilton came out saying, "Oh, we're so sorry. O'Keeffe had to fly to New York because over the 2 stolen paintings, 2 paintings were stolen like some 40 or 50 years ago. They are found, and in the many owners in between, it was a court case and she had to appear in the court." I said, "Oh, when do you expect her to be back?" "Well, not so long, a few days like that." Well, Yuri, after a long talk, decided to come back to Japan. Me, fortunately, I had my American parents living in Tucson, Arizona. They had been living there after his retirement in Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And I had visited my parents after they had moved to Tucson, Arizona. Oh, Michi, come and stay with us like that. And for the next 3 days, we had dinner. Mother said, she's very proper, efficient, you know, I mind you. Michi, it's time for you to call Juan, like that. I said, Juan, is she back? No, probably tomorrow, like that. Went on like that. And finally, she came back. So I packed, said goodbye to my American parents and went. That was in September of 1980. And sure enough, and I had lunch with Miss O'Keefe. We call her Miss O'Keefe. And Stiglitz, when after they got married, some people in New York called her Mrs. Stiglitz. And Stiglitz got so mad. Don't call her Mrs. Stiglitz. She's not Stiglitz. Call her Georgia or O'Keefe. So in those days, I mean, in the real life, most people called her, addressed her Miss O'Keefe, and only very small number of intimate, you know, people around her called her Georgia. I didn't dare call her. I didn't have a chance to call her Georgia. So what was I talking about?
Just your meeting, which finally happened, which is fantastic.
That was the clip about.
Yes, it was. We got to there because you were talking about your friend who you were having dinner with in the clip, dinner with my friend.
Oh yes, Yuri and I made a trip. So Yuri came back and I got to see her.
Yes.
And then if I keep going, it'll be another talk. So I get back to this dinner with my friend. And your question was, what, you know, were we talking about, right? Over the dinner.
Yes.
And the occasion was after we came back, having seen a new documentary released for the first time. The showing was done in Iwanami Hall, I think, in Tokyo. John Paul Sartre passed away in April of that year, 1980. So a lot of events were planned in Tokyo, you know, cultural events in commemoration, in memory of Sartre. He was well, you know, respected. He and Simone de Beauvoir had been heroes for a long, long time in the intellectual artistic circle. So documentation of Sartre's life with Simone de Beauvoir, we are really greatly impressed. And in those days, the way both of them lived without getting married, without having a child, and each one was free to make a lover or whatever, you know, for us, it was like a miracle. You know, how could they do it? So seeing this document was highly interesting and portraying their later lives. So when we came back, still sort of, you know, hot blood, you know, after seeing this exciting movie, the conversation went on. Unfortunately, I don't remember the exact words of an hour-long conversation.
Well, it's I really enjoyed that piece because it really brought back the way in which I think women were making work that was very focused on their domestic situations, on their own homes, on their own their friends, and that's so I think we should probably see the clip now and let people watch.
Come on down. I hear you're feeling down.
Yeah, do we have everything? I hope so. All right? はい。これ綺麗。お腹すいた、お腹すいた。綺麗。ちょっとじゃあワインね。今。はい。Thanks. Beautiful. Yes. ね。はい。はるかアルゼンチン。じゃあね。乾杯。乾杯。お腹食べに。うん。美味しい？うん。different ね。ちょっとね。2段階あるみたいです。わお。じゃあ舌の先の感じる味とそれから少しずつ喉に入っていくときにちょっと変わる感じね。でもほらワインってね、あんまり。
Now, finally, Michi, we're going to finish our conversation and screening tonight by playing your film, your beautiful, beautiful film, Cherry Blossoms, in its entirety. Not a clip, but the whole piece, because it is so beautiful. Can you tell us just a little bit? We just have a bit of time left before our evening is at an end, before we play the film. Can you tell us just a bit about what you were thinking about when you made this beautiful film?
Well, at that time, I was listening to Miles Davis's LP record called Get Up With It. And it was the beautiful, beautiful jazz, trumpet. And oh, gee, I should make a film of cherry blossoms. It'll be perfect. And that's how I filmed. But as a result, Miles Davis' beautiful jazz did not go, it didn't match at all. But the reason why I had been so interested in, attracted to cherry blossoms, I got a huge inspiration still in my head from a short story called, written by Ango Sakaguchi. Unfortunately, I don't think his works have been translated into English. He is one of my favorite writers. He died in 1955 at the age of 48. So, he was very popular, especially during 10 years after World War II. He inspired college students and intellectuals in Japan. Massive influence. I like the way his mind works, the way he writes, so succinct and straight to the core. That's what O'Keeffe does. Every great mind does in the world. But it's very difficult. And incidentally, when I told George O'Keeffe writes beautifully. The first time I met George O'Keeffe, oh, Mr. O'Keeffe, you write so well, so beautifully. I said, well, don't you? I said, it's so difficult. And she said, well, it is difficult. Anything you do, what you really want to express, what is you, actually trying to create what is you, right? Visually or in print, that's the most difficult thing, she said. Well, that I remember. So get to the core of the important issue. This, a short story titled In a Cherry Forest Under the Full-Bloomed Cherry Blossoms. I will give you just the ending of it because no time. Well, a scary murderer and robber, burglar, living in the mountain near Kyoto, found a beautiful woman in Kyoto. And he wanted to bring her with him. So he killed her husband and carried her on his back to his home. And I will just abbreviate, he had to go through at this time of cherry blossom time under the full bloom blossoms. So the thing is, it's so beautiful. He's so strongly drawn to it, but for this scary man, murderer, he feels scared. You see, it's on the both sides of the same coin, beautiful and so scary. I mean, that's, I think, Ango Sakaguchi wanted to symbolically express through this short story. Well, at the end of the story, from the city, according to her wish, he brought her back to the city, and where she collected the heads of young men or dancers, etc. It was her hobby to play a game with real heads. It was a gruesome part. And then he got bored. He misses mountains so terribly. And now cherry blossom time is approaching. And it's a short period, just a week or so, blossoms bloom and then go. So he has to hurry. And she says, no. I mean, I don't want to go back, and on. In the end, she thought probably she could manipulate him anyway once I get there. So she said, okay, I will go back this time. And so he carried her and came to under the fully bloomed cherry blossoms. And she was holding him so tight, her fingers, almost like plunging into his skin or almost strangling him. And he wanted to say, stop it. And then he turned around and he saw an old woman, a monster. The whole existence was in purple and kinky hair was in green. Her mouth was open from ear to ear, and he was scared, and he took away her arms, and she slipped down and dropped on the ground, and he got on to her and strangled her as much as he could. And he looked at the body. It wasn't a monster. It was the beautiful woman he had been in love with. And this man had never cried on the mountain. His tears came down, and then a few petals started to fall on the back of her body, and then he couldn't move, and then, but he didn't have, he had no reason to hurry. He now felt he had no place to go back to. He just kept sitting there or lying there, and more petals kept falling, covering the entire body, and on his body too. He kept losing his eyesight and feelings. And the end of the story, he tried to see his face, her face again, dug his hand into the piles of cherry blossom petals. There was none. It was just piles of cherry blossom petals. And then the end of the story, he couldn't express his feeling because he would have died anyway. And then probably his body would disappear just the same way as beautiful women's. Well, this story, I am strongly attached to it, but every time I read, I still don't understand, here and there. But this is roughly speaking, the outline of the story. Because of this story, I'm strongly attached to cherry blossoms, and the music, and Miles Davis' music didn't work. So I consulted with Toshi Ichianagi, who is now one of the only remaining great contemporary composers after Takemitsu is gone. And there's one other, Joji Yuasa is still on this planet. Toshi Ichianagi is well. He plays ping pong. He's very genki. And so we can, so he and another, there was a concert at Tokyo American Center. It had dawned on me. Maybe part of that live concert would fit my short film. So I talked to Toshi Ichianagi. He said he would see to it, and he surely did. He cut a piece which he thought would be perfect to accompany my cherry blossom film. That's how music was made, thanks to all these people's. And I mean, I have to say, just can you imagine? I mean, no one believes. I mean, Toshi Ichianagi, this great composer, did all this work for me. Just for, I think I thank you, Mr. Ichianagi. This is just a token of my gratitude, a bottle of Johnny Walker or something. That's how he did for me. I'm so embarrassed thinking of those days, but here it is.
It's so wonderful. The audio, the music is wonderful, and it's suited so well.
Thank you.
Shall we will go out now. I think I want to thank you, Jesse, for bringing Michi's work to us here in Toronto, in Canada, and North America. And Michi, it's such a pleasure to meet you, and to thank you both for this wonderful conversation. And we will now go out with the entire film of Cherry Blossoms. Thank you, everybody. And good night.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.